public opinion or in the electoral process, in the political process, actually come together like we are today and affect some change in those other ways as well. So hopefully this all can be not only successful in stopping, but also in the county, but also successful as an educational tool, and bring people together for those other causes.
And on that point, like it makes me think of just how addicted they are to prosecuting cannabis growth. Like it's been big business for years. They bragged about the millions that they brought in from you guys in permitting fees, and then the millions that they brought in administrative fees and their fines and their settlement agreements, and that money's just getting dumped back into more enforcement. Like they're not using it to help the community. They're using the enforcement proceeds to do more enforcement, and it's not good government. It's not something that our lawsuit can solve, but like these things they're like, as you point, they're definitely related. And it's not for a shortage of funds, because we know how much money they brag about bringing in through cannabis. And they're using that money to what? Fly military helicopters over your properties to make sure you're not growing weed? Like that's not where the money should be going. But it's not something our lawsuit can fix, but like you as citizens can fix it, because ultimately you're the decision makers here.
Well, you know, Jared, when you said it was not just about pot, you really hit the bullseye, because it's attitudinal. And what's happening here is profoundly criminal. Just plain criminal. It's unbelievable. I mean, I've been here 50 years, and I've seen the whole thing. And we were just talking about the necessity for the community getting together in some way. Well, we've been there. And in my case, when I got here, we knew, my wife and I knew we wanted to live up in Salmon Creek. That's where we wanted to live. We were fleeing all the nonsense that like so many of us here. And I got a building permit so that I'd be safe. We laugh about that. And then I read the fine print, and I realized that they could abate my house because I was using old wood. I was using recycled lumber. And what recycled lumber was I using? I was using 1x12 orange 1949 fir from the Piercy house I tore down. I was using oak grove redwood from another house that I tore down. You can't buy better wood than that if you can even find it anymore. And so that's the wood I was using. Well, of course, I went ahead and did it. But I realized right then and there, we had a problem here. And so I just carried that with me until the state in about 1978 or 9 told the counties that they needed to have a general plan. And they had 9 elements in it, and arguably the most important of them was the housing element. And I was put on the housing element, the committee that wrote that, the county's first housing element. And I was the alternative owner builder representative on that committee. And we wrote our own law and made them pass it. And we got, I think, maybe about 300 people under that. But they fought us every single step of the way. Everything we did, they fought against. And that has happened steadily. And we held them, our crowning achievement probably in 1988, when they came out after we wrote the housing element, they rewrote it without any permission. And we went back in and took their damn rewrite out, and we had to deal with that kind of stuff steadily. Well, then, after a couple years went by, they came up with the code enforcement program. Do you remember that? How many of you were in 88 at those hearings? Boy, it was a politician's dream. We had people from every area of the society in the county at these hearings. And what happened was, at that point, they were in the planning and building department, they were jabbing Dan Toronto, who is a hero, just one of the greatest public servants that ever drew breath. He had sparked plugged all of this, he chaired the committee, and many others. In the planning department at that point, they were jabbing Dan, jabbing him in the chest and saying, "We're going to do it this time, Dan." And he said, "Well, we'll see about that." But we only had 2 weeks to go before they were going to put it in front of the board. And you better remember, we turned this county upside down. We went on every TV show, radio program, we put a copy of that thing in every library. So don't take our word for it, you remember this library, read it. And they read it. And by that time, the board knew that the supervisors' chambers were not going to be adequate for these hearings. So they put it in a big auditorium, remember that? And Dan and I didn't know if anyone was going to get many people there. We couldn't find a parking place. Oh, and so we had 5 hearings, and it was glorious. But the upshot of it was we shot that plan dead cold in the water. And here is where I don't have to tell you guys, as we look ahead at what we can expect. Reefs, snags, because we shot the plan dead cold. Oh, no, we didn't. We just made them put it on the shelf. And then they weren't happy because they were used to telling you what to do. And so they let us sit until the Board of Supervisors attention span passed, which is about 10 days. And then they started taking stuff piecemeal out of the program and jamming it through the board. And that's how the Code Enforcement Strike Force got started. Can you imagine how we felt when we heard that they were giving, they called it, very shortly, they realized Code Enforcement Strike Force was a little too accurate. They started calling it the godmother and apple pies group or something, and now it's the Code Enforcement Unit. But when we heard that they were putting the pod enforcement in the hands of the Code Enforcement Strike Force, we didn't see it coming. And now, so the point being, it was such a huge success, but let us not kid ourselves. You guys live in the room, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. And we will now face the problem. I'm assuming that you guys are going to just wail on them. And when that is done, we will face the problem of how to deal with it when the attention span on the board exactly. So anyway, you can just imagine how I feel, because I've been out of this for a long time. I've been writing books about what's really happening. But having been out of it for this long, can you imagine how I feel to see Shakti come in and pick up a torch like this? And then